Hey, everybody. God, I'm so glad to see everybody today. It has been a long couple of weeks. I've missed you guys and gals, but I'm back today with my Real Estate Her Way with Lisa Copeland, with one of my very favorite humans on planet Earth. But we're not going to talk about that today or anything else when it comes to Rebecca and I. We're going to talk about her journey because I think her journey is such an important message to everybody out there who's thinking, I can't get in this game. I can't get into real estate. I can't be successful. I hear so many I can'ts nowadays. And I want to show you living and breathing proof that if you put your mind to something, anything is possible. So today, my guest is Rebecca Contreras. She is an entrepreneur. She is the CEO of Avant-Garde. She started out literally in poverty, growing up in East Austin, ended up in the Oval Office of the White House serving President George W. Bush. And then more importantly, when it comes to this podcast, she's a real estate mogul, and she has built a multi-million-dollar portfolio that has really become part of her wealth plan. So Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. It's always great to watch you and see what you do to empower so many people to build wealth. And as you know, that's something that will provide freedom. And I'm thrilled to be with you to tell you my story, and of course, love you and your family to death.
Oh my God. And I love how you said the word freedom. Freedom, right?
Yes.
When you can go to bed at night and know that you're making money in your sleep, that is freedom.
Freedom.
Sharon Lechter, our dear friend, who is considered who was the co-author of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad Empire, who really brought this whole concept to the forefront about 20 something years ago of cash flow, right? Mm-hmm. And cash flow is freedom. You and I both have businesses and investments that cash flow. And yes. It is freedom, right? That means we can pick up and we can go somewhere and we can do something with our family and we can bless other people. But before I go there, because I just know everything about you, but I want everybody who follows me, all of my followers and my audience, to know everything about you. And if you have not shared this out yet, if you're watching this live or if you're catching the replay, I promise you this will change somebody's life listening to Rebecca's story. I want to encourage you to share it out. Rebecca, have your team share it out. And I want you all to take notes, get a pad and paper, because this woman is the real deal. So Rebecca, take us back. You are also an author, a best-selling author of the book.
So I have my book, Lost Girl, which is a best-selling book, and it's available on Amazon as well as through RebeccaContreras.com. But my tagline for the book, Lisa, is from the hood to the White House to millionaire entrepreneur. And it's a lot to take in, and obviously encourage your listeners and viewers to get the book. It's an incredible story. It's the American dream story. And I feel very blessed to have lived and am living the American dream story. But, my start was not where it is now. Had a really, really rough, hard start. One of 4 children, 3 of the 4 children had different fathers, and I have a twin brother, and we all had different fathers. My mother wasn't married to them. We didn't know our fathers. She never owned a home, by the way, in her entire life. She was a product of the welfare system in government, and a drug addict, and abandoned us at age 5. I tell the whole story in the first 3 chapters of Lost Girl. Because I want people to understand it doesn't matter what their environmental or socioeconomic factors are, that they don't have to stay there, right? That they can get in the driver's seat of their own future. I was generationally a part of a family that lived in poverty, and my grandmother didn't own a home.
Are you the first homeowner in your family, do you think?
So my older brother was the first one, Daniel, and he was also the first one to start his business. He was a trailblazer for our family. Yeah. He started his business a few years before I started mine, and he also bought a home a few years before I bought mine. But even the whole concept of home ownership, I mean, when you're a renter, and in my case, we lived in projects, so they were government assisted housing. My mother never even paid, rent. When you live in habitual generational poverty like that, in a cycle of addiction and abuse and mental illness, it really wreaks havoc on your mental state, but also your future. And there's two trajectories. People can either stay in that state and perpetuate the cycle, or they can make a decision to put a stake in the ground and say, enough is enough. I don't want this for my life. I don't want this for my own children, and change that generational cycle and sever it for generations to come. And my husband and I have both been able to do that. So I was probably 19 when I, as a high school dropout, single mom on welfare, when I decided to really, I'd had enough of the lifestyle of dysfunction, addiction, and abuse, and I decided to give my heart to God and begin my faith journey, to begin my own inner transformation. So Lisa, as you know, I'm a firm believer in inner transformation. I think that the outward transformation can happen, but a key to my success has been starting with that inner spiritual transformation, which involved a tremendous amount of therapy and counseling and church going and Bible studies and just learning who I was. When I first started my journey off of welfare, I was 19, and I met my husband at the time. He was 20. He was 10 years older than I am, so he was 29. And he was working with inner city kids in the inner city where I was living in and grew up in, and he was working with gangs. And David, he's just bigger than life, and he's a visionary. And his mother, on the flip side of my mother, was also a single mom with 5 kids, but she never took $1 from the government. She worked 2 and 3 jobs. She moved her family when his dad died at 5 to all white neighborhood back in the 60s, when, as Mexicans, there were very few Mexicans living in that part of Austin. And she, as a Mexican woman, as a non-educated Mexican woman, she moved her family and bought their first home in an all-white neighborhood. And so David grew up with the concept of home ownership, and saw his mom work really hard to buy her first home. So when we got married, a couple of years after my rehab and my transformation, we got married and started our journey together. We'll be married 35 years next year. He always wanted to buy a home. And I remember when he first told me we're going to buy a home, I was terrified. I was like, wait a minute, we can't afford it. We don't have money. How are we going to afford it? And I would clam down terrified. But when that first step happened and we bought our first home, it really, really changed our life. But it takes that one step, Lisa, and that one decision point. And sometimes, in my case, it takes somebody outside that can have a good influence on you to say, there's another pathway. Like, you don't have to live in poverty. You actually can own a home. You actually can develop assets. And it just gave me a hunger to begin to do that when we had our first home. And now we've owned, I think we have over 20 properties we've owned, some of which we've lived in ourselves. And, it's just amazing that ricochet effect that can happen when you make that decision and you really deliberately put a strategy in place to be a homeowner and to gain home ownership assets.
And so take us back to, because I know people really want to know that backstory. Like, there's more to just, high school dropout, welfare to work, ends up in the White House. Who were some of the most important people in your journey? Who were some of the people in your journey that made you know that you can? I mean, I think about, like, I have a bad day or lose a deal or something happen to think, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. How do you ever rebound from this? I mean, I don't really do that, but I have people on my team that do that. Yeah. That happens to them. Yeah. Right. And every day for you was a bad day growing up. Every day for you, every day was fear and what's going to happen next and how are you going to pay your bills? And, your book, I've read it and listened to it. Of course, when I listened to it, I cried, physically cried, because I know you, and to know what you went through and the abuse and the poverty and everything that happened to you, it crushed me inside. I can remember having dinner with you and going, okay, I'm on chapter 7 and here's what happened here. And this is what happened here. And then you and David would really kind of give me the rest of the story. I'm like, oh, like, how could it be any worse than what I read? But it was.
Yeah. I'm a product of my relationships, Lisa. I always tell people your network is your superpower. Your network is so critical to your success. I started in a network of dysfunction, addicts, gang members, losers. And, when I came into my transformation at age 19, between the age of 19 and about 21, I made connections and got around good people. The very first time that I heard someone tell me that I was smart and had potential, I could not believe what had come out of that person's mouth, because my entire life, and I'm not very strong academically. As a dropout, I always struggled academically. I know now the reason for my struggle was not because I was dumb, but because of the environmental factors that were not conducive to my learning. My mother never went to one PTA meeting. She never made me do homework. When I dropped out, it was just like, okay, do whatever you want to do type of thing. But when that one individual, it was one of my youth pastor's wife, Lupita was her name, when she said, Becky, you're really smart. I was like, I am? I was 19 years old going, who are you talking to? I'm not very smart. I've been told I was stupid. My teacher, I had some good teachers, but I had some really awful teachers that, of course, I was behaving in an awful way, frustrating them. So I'm sure that had to do with them telling me you're never going to amount to anything. But my mental state at that point was I was going to be in poverty and addicted to drugs, with mental issues, and living with a baby daddy who I tell the story in the book. I was his mistress, and he was a big drug dealer in the Austin area, and he controlled me, manipulated me, abused me, and I was under his control. So when I met my husband David and came out of that, that was my state of mind. So what I did, Lisa, was I decided, first of all, to go back to school. So everything, some people get so overwhelmed with trauma and with issues and with life. Divorce happens, abuse happens, all those sorts of stuff, right? It just takes one baby step at a time. Right. So that first baby step was I decided to go back to school to get my GED and enroll in a welfare to work initiative for the state of Texas that was sponsored by the city of Austin. And part of the gig was, if you went through this welfare to work initiative, they would help you get your GED, get a temporary job, and get off of welfare. And that's all I wanted. That was my number one goal. I never dreamed and said, oh, I'm going to get off of welfare, then I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. It was like one baby step at a time.
Which is what I would tell your viewers sometimes. Like, someone's watching this right now, and you need to take a baby step.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't do that because of fear or insecurity or lack of whatever it is. It's difficult to take that first step. So for me, it was that first step. I landed a job working for a woman by the name of Ann Richards here in the state of Texas.
Oh, just Ann Richards.
Yeah, just Ann Richards.
Ann Richards to all of you guys out there that are not Texans. Yeah.
And Lisa, it was the first time I saw a woman in power. It was the first time in my community, Hispanic community, in East El Paso by the border where I was born, and then grew up in East Austin back in the hood when it was hood. And I never saw women in power. My destiny was barefoot, pregnant with multiple kids, probably from multiple baby daddies, given my trajectory. And when I saw Ann Richards in power, it threw me back. I never knew that women could own such presence and such power. She was bigger than a gem. She wasn't, and I tell you what, she was a true Texas Democrat, good person, right? A good woman. And then my next boss, she went to be governor, and then in came Kay Bailey Hutchison. So under Kay's leadership, Lisa, I met a woman by the name of Donna, who was Kay's number 2. And that woman adopted me and took me in as her own. I was her project. I talk about her in the book, and she sent me back to school, to the LBJ School of Public Affairs. She sent me to management training. She invested in me and spent time with me. And she was really the kind of the propelling icon, mentor, leader that really made me believe in myself. And obviously I did the hard work on me, right? Nobody's going to give you, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I haven't been given opportunities on a silver platter. I've had to work my ass off for them and prove that I can do it, and also be set apart to make a difference. And it was under Donna's leadership that I caught the eye of George W. Bush when he was governor.
Wow. And you even had insecurities. You have to tell quickly the story, my favorite story of, Governor Bush at that point had asked you and your family to come to Washington, D.C., serve in his administration. You and David and the kids pack up. You're in Washington, D.C., and in walks the Secret Service.
Yeah. There's actually tell the full story in the book, so you'll have to get it. But
I'll give you the book, y'all, to get the rest of these stories. I'm just teasing you.
Yeah, the 50,000 foot version. I had a horrible past and I had made some really bad decisions, but thankfully they were all in my wayward teen days. And as an adult, I started making good choices. But it was my second mentor, which was my iconic change gamer. There are people that God will bring into your life to change the game.
For a reason or a season, right?
Game seasons or game changers. I mean, his name was Clay, and he was bigger than life, and he was the president's best friend. And he's the one that helped me get through Secret Service clearance. But I tell the full story how I almost didn't make Secret Service clearance had it not been for people that believed in me, that knew that the woman that the Secret Service was talking about in that big binder of background investigation was not the same woman sitting in the White House. And I was even told, it's clear to us that this is not you, and this is your teen wayward past. And, they gave me a pass and gave me that top secret clearance. And, I served President Bush for a total of 12 years in the White House. And then he asked me to serve on the board of West Point during one of the most critical times in our nation, when our cadets were deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan, and was able to be a part of that institution and the tremendous work that we did with preparing those students and those kids really for war, a new kind of war, right? We were fighting a chemical kind of war, never been done before. So I've just had great opportunities. As a matter of fact, I was just with President Bush in May, and he read Lost Girl and wrote me a note about it and just said he was so touched and heartfelt. And he said, Becca, he calls me Becca. He said, Becca, I'm honored to have served with you. And I mean, here's a man who's former president of the United States, bigger than life, and he's thanking me for serving with me. And so it just tells you the kind of man that he is. But I'm very thankful to President Bush for all of his belief in me. I'm thankful to my mentors, Clay and Donna, for their belief in me. But I'm also thankful that I had the grit, the resolve, and the drive to take my life and grab it by the horns and drive my own future. And you know our story. My husband's been a big part of my journey, and he's been a big fan of mine and a big visionary for us. And it's been just amazing to see what has happened in a very short period of time over the last 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been longer than 30 years, but yes, you're right. And okay, so when you started investing in real estate, what was your plan? Like
well, David and I always wanted to be investors. We could barely afford to buy our own house because I was a government employee on a government salary, and he was just making his way up in the high-tech industry, working his way up. He started as a temp in the fab and had to work his way up as well. He's not traditionally educated with a college degree, nor am I. So we both had to kind of work our way, from the bottom up, which is a good way to do it, by the way. I'm not discounting that. It definitely worked for us, but we worked hard. But I remember the first time, I'll tell you a funny story. So we were in our first starter home, and David wanted to buy our second home, and he's always driving around the neighborhood looking at houses, and I'd like a bigger house. Oh, I'd like a bigger house. And you know that because you've been our realtor.
I was going to say, I'm his realtor. I know, and God love him for that.
Yeah, and you know what, Lisa? I used to think, well, why can't you be happy with what we have? And this is an amazing house, and it's only, our first starter home was only like $1,200 a month, which was amazing. And this other house he wanted would have been like $2,500 a month. And I'm like, where are we going to get the money from? And I'm on a government salary, and I was still working for the state at the time. And what's amazing is David has always just been the trailblazer to say, babe, we can do this. Like, babe, all we have to do is cut back here, save here. Like, we can do it. And we have bought, I think we're on our 6th house now. I lose count of owning. And then, of course, we have multiple properties and multiple doors, investment homes. But, even buying, so we decided after buying multiple homes for ourselves and doing very well with that, because people don't understand, the days of somebody buying a house and living in it for 30 and 40 years and paying it off. I'm like, those days are over. Like, every house we've had, we've tripled and we've doubled our investment, and we take that money and use it for investments. So, when you have a little bit of money that you make off equity, or even just get, like, we've gotten multiple equity loans in our original homes. That's how we started investing, just a little bit at a time. We wanted to buy our first rental property. And we started, Lisa, buying investment properties not even 10 years ago. Okay. So, and in about a very accelerated time period, we now own over 15 doors. including a commercial property that we bought. But every single home, when we share our story, and I talk to women in particular, all they want to know is, how did you get started? Like, the thought of me coming up with 30 or 40 or 50 or 100,000 down for a down payment on an investment property, because it's 20% down, as you know, it's daunting to them. And I always say, just start a little bit at a time. I'm a saver, Lisa. We're debt free outside of our homes. As Sharon says, assets are sexy.
Yep.
And we have good debt, but we don't have bad debt. And I have worked really hard as the financial manager for our home, because I manage the money and make sure we're saving and make sure we're constantly, taking our money and making it work for us. Before we lived in a big house, when I could live, I remember you said something to me probably about 8 years ago, when I made my first million 8 years ago. And now, I've been so blessed. Our company is multi-million dollar in terms of our revenue. But when I made my first million, I remember someone saying, gosh, I noticed you guys live in a modest house, and you drive a modest car. I wasn't buying, $2-3 million homes. I mean, not even $1 million home. We would live in a modest house, and we would drive modest cars, and then we would take our money, whatever we could have in excess, save it, and then roll it. And that's how we bought our first home. And then David did one rehab in Austin that we bought for virtually nothing. We rehabbed it, and then we held it. And then 5 years later, you sold it for us, and it almost tripled in value what we paid. And we took that money and we bought our multi-doors. And now, we bought multiple multi-doors. It's just rolling. It's rolling your cash. It's not overspending or over living beyond your means. It's so important to make your money work for you, even if it means not overspending today, cutting back to make sure that cash is going to work for you and you're not spending every dime that you make.
It's so important, and it's hard to get started, but there are so many programs out there that help people get started. They help people get in the game. You just attended 10X Ladies. We had such a good time out there in Miami. Elena Cardone's 10X Ladies, and our friend Sharon Lecter got the Lifetime Achievement Award. What was one of the big takeaways from 10X Ladies that you would share with my audience about, seeing 1,000 women in a room coming together, like all wanting the same thing? And it's not the same thing, but it's the same thing. They want the best for themselves, their families, their businesses, their communities, their neighborhood, their schools. Like, what was one of your big takeaways from 10X Ladies?
Well, I'll tell you, I was shocked when Grant talked about the wealth that's available to women and kind of the wealth bubble that's coming for women. But when he shared that only 10% of multimillionaires in the US are women.
Yeah.
To learn that I'm in the 10%, I was shocked at that. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But we make things happen. We run things. We save more money than anybody else saves. We pay off our debt faster. As you know, the data shows that we pay off our debt faster. We're savers. Why are we not at least 30% of the wealth in America? And so that was a big aha moment for me. The other thing, from a positive side, the thing that energized me was to watch Elena and just how she energizes and imparts to those women. She's not just, I don't do dog and pony shows. I have a really hard time with dog and pony shows, and I have ADD, as you know, so my attention is very low. But to watch her truly engage with those women and provide them the tools on how they can do it for themselves, and to then believe in them and say, I'm going to spend time with you, like all day today is dedicated just for you. And then she's got an entire army of team members that came alongside the attendees to see what they needed. How could they provide support? Are there tools that they need? Where can they provide assistance? I just think the energy in that room, and I go to conferences. I'm not a big conference attender because I'm really busy, but when I do go, I look at the response and the energy, but I also look at the substance that's being provided. And the substance of the tools available through the 10X network is tremendous. And I met several women that came up to me, and we talked about, what they were doing in their life and how they're just starting their first property investment. And I shared my story with them, and they were like, how did you do it? Just the hunger, Lisa, of the women in that room was really electric.
you know, and it's so crazy. You know, I'm lucky enough to have Grant and Elena as my business partners, and I love them, and they're the real deal. They are the real deal. End of story. But you know, there's going to be the largest transference of wealth in the next 10 years. It'll be in the trillions of dollars, right? What happens is most of us have husbands that are older. Okay. Unfortunately, they die off. The money comes to us. And so there's been so many women who have not been in control of the money that are our age that are about to come into a lot of money. Their parents pass away, their older husbands pass away. So we're going to see that transference of wealth. And one thing that was the most jarring thing I heard was when Sharon Lechter said 80% of men will die married, 80% of women will die unmarried. Wow. Wow.
It's shocking.
It's terrifying. And so if we're not in control of our money, we're not in control of our finances, we don't know where the money is. We have an 80% chance, y'all, 80% chance that we're going to die. I don't want to say alone because that's kind of creepy, but alone, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, and I think part of it is that, you know, the guys just get remarried. That's what they do. That's
Right.
why
Right.
80% of men will die married.
Yeah.
And because, you know, one dies and I think that they move to the next one. I think they're wondering who's going to make their next meal. I'm not sure. But anyways, those numbers to me absolutely stop me in my path. Like, they're terrifying to me. And that just makes me know more than ever that I've got to be on a quest doing what I do to help women build their empires, to introduce them to people like you, Rebecca, who are out there doing it every single day, who are, you know, you're one of the most fearless people I know. You know, you just like, you're like, okay, let's go. Like when I show you guys a deal, you're like, okay, let's go. If it cash flows, you're usually in, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the key is, you know, first of all, I like you and like Elena and Grant and Sharon believe that, you know, assets, property, real estate is where it is in
The only way
wealth
to
building.
face.
Listen, I have made money in my company. I have 130 consultants across 9 states, and I've built it from the ground up, and we make money in our company. But most of my net worth, Lisa, in the last 10 years has come from the real estate that you've sold David and I. So when we look at the net worth portfolio, my investment banker, with David and I, every January we meet with him. We're sending him the updates to all the properties that you. I mean, for about a year or two, you were like, we were closing. Oh, there's a deal. There's a deal. There's a deal.
That again, by the way, we need to get that going again.
Yeah. But when I sent him the update here in January of 2024, he said, Rebecca, your net worth has just increased by 30%. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, this is what we're doing. And so, you know, we are on a goal to build generational legacy. And as you know, we have a nonprofit. I have a huge give back initiative for my
tell
girls.
us about your nonprofit, because
Yeah, so David and I have had a nonprofit for about 15 years now. We work with inner city kids. One of my key initiatives out of the nonprofit is Girls of Legacy, where we're scholarshiping minority girls, inner city girls out of the inner city in Austin to go to university. And some of them are at ACC, but it's called Girls of Legacy. And I'd encourage your viewerships to connect with RebeccaContreras.com and go to the Girls of Legacy link to learn more. I personally match every dollar. So this year we were able to give away $50,000 in scholarships to those 12 girls.
Yeah.
So we have, we started with just 5 girls, and the initiative just was birthed 2 years ago out of a passion that I have to help our generation stay in school and get education, because I do believe education is a key to success. It's not the only key. It certainly wasn't my key, but it is a key. And I want to support our inner city communities, and especially girls that are college bound, so that they can have an opportunity to go to college. But it's so legacy, wealth legacy building is multifold, Lisa. It's for our work in the community, so that we can write our own check. Listen, this year when I raised $25,000, be able to write that $25,000 check, that felt very liberating. You know, my goal is to give away $1 million as an entrepreneur in 1 year, and I'm on the trajectory to do that, and I will do that. But in addition to that, we've changed the generational legacy for our children and our grandchildren. And David and I both were poor. I was on welfare. His mom worked multiple jobs, both single parent home. Same tragedy with addiction and drugs and trauma and all the things that, his tragedy was he lost his dad when he was 5 and he left the mother with the babies. And so she had to raise them by herself. So,
And
but
she did
we changed that for our kids. And, we never want our children to ever suffer the way that we suffered. But more importantly, we're raising them to understand financial management and savings. And my daughter and her husband bought their first home. They actually ended up buying a duplex and they leased the other side. So they got really smart. That's another idea for some of the first homeowners, instead of buying a big house, buy a duplex and rent the other side and start getting some rental income.
So smart.
Yeah. So they did that and they love it. And our daughter's on her way to get her first home next year, Lord willing. And, but it's teaching your children how to save, how to build wealth, how to invest, and how to be financially free, because freedom is so important, Lisa. Time is money. And when you have to clock in and clock out and work 50, 60 hours a week to barely make ends meet, it's debilitating to the human soul. And there's a lot of people that do it, and we did it. Listen, we did it. But when you build freedom through wealth and assets by building your real estate portfolio and your investment portfolio, you're able to change that trajectory for yourself and for your family and your grandchildren.
Okay, so I'm going to go down a road that's either going to be popular or not popular, but you grew up very, very poor. You grew up in East Austin. You and your husband, you're a Latina. Your husband is Hispanic. You've done very well. You're entrepreneurs. We have a very, very important election coming up. And you guys know I'm going there. I'm just going there because I've got to save America at all costs. And it doesn't have to be personal, right? It isn't about people. It's about policies. I want to get a T-shirt that says, "It's not the people, it's the policies." Right? I'm not a Trump Barbie doll. I don't hate Kamala. I don't. Right? It isn't that. But I like his policies. I hate her policies. End of story. Not people, policies. So, knowing where you came from, knowing you're Hispanic, knowing all of that, who are you voting for president?
Well, first, let me just say I've been involved in government politics since 1989, working for the most powerful Democrat in Texas and the most powerful Democrat in Texas.
I love Ann Richards. I would vote for Ann Richards in a hot minute.
Well, so I always tell people if Ann were alive today, she'd be rolling in her grave, wondering what the hell is going on, because she was a good conservative. I would say middle of the road Democrat, as was her lieutenant governor. Mm-hmm. And as you know, George W. was very close with Bob Bullock, and Bob Bullock was the lieutenant governor under Ann. And anyway, I think it's been so toxic being involved in working for three iconic political leaders, Ann, K, and W, one Democrat and two Republicans. And then we've served in the White House. My husband and I both served President Bush. And it's to become so toxic and so divisive, but it's also veered so far from what the fundamental idea of America is, that, I had a conversation the other day with someone who I love dearly, who happens to be on the opposite spectrum. I'm a conservative Republican. I don't shy away from that. And I was having a conversation with her. She's a moderate Republican, and she's not voting. She's voting for the Democratic ticket. And so I said to her, help me understand why. Is it because I happen to know your policies, and I happen to know you're pro-education, you're for protecting the borders, you're for a strong economy, you're for less taxes, so help me understand. And her response was, I just can't stand President Trump, and I think he's horrible for America. And so I said to her with the sort of notion about I seek to understand, not attacking, help me understand where are you gleaning that from? Because when you look at policy, you look across all the policies of what President Trump did, every single policy put America on a great track. So what are you talking about? Stark difference between that economy and this economy, that border and this border. And anyway, we could never come to eye to eye. So the way we parted, and this is the way I do with people that I disagree with, I think it's important to listen. I think it's important to take people's opinion and to listen, and also share your own opinion. I said to her, as long as you're voting your convictions, and it's between you, your God, and your family, but you're looking at policy and not personality, because I suspect that the biggest issue you have with Trump is his personality. And the reason that I suspect that, I told her, is because I had that when he first ran.
I remember
I
you.
did not,
I mean, you
I
and I
did
used
not,
to kind of go at it.
yeah, I didn't like his personality. I thought he was a bully. I thought he was mean. I thought he was brash. I thought he was a narcissist. I didn't like him. I voted for him because I am a Republican, and the policy that he was advocating for aligned with my policy. And I put my personality dislike of him aside. And then David and I got invited to the Hispanic Heritage Month the first year he and Mike Pence were in the White House, and we got to see him up close and hear him. And I saw a different man. And I'm like, I even said to my friend in the White House, why doesn't he show this side of him to the American public? Because he just was so compassionate, so caring, so on point, and just a different personality, right? And I've decided this election, I'm not going to vote for personality. I care more about America. I think President Trump is what America needs. And honestly, I think sometimes, because we're so off track, that when you get so off the radar, it takes a really strong personality to bring us back to the place where we need to be. And I don't know that there is, first of all, there's nobody else running on the Republican ticket. And I don't know that there's anybody else that can help put America back on track. We're so broken in so many ways, not only socially, but the economy, the border, and all the various issues. And it's just really mind-blowing to me that people are focused on personality and not policy. If this election, Lisa, were about policy and platforms and results, there's only one clear candidate for that. But it's not. It's about joy, hope, and personality. And I am a joy and hope person. Don't get me wrong. I love Jesus. I love joy. I love hope. But you can't hope in change in border policy. There is no way to hope that change in.
Well, we were just with the U.S. Border Patrol.
I saw that.
PBR, it's pro bull riding event in Austin, Texas. They had a whole booth set up, and I went up, and the head commander, this is U.S. Border Patrol. I said, who are you voting for president? I think it's an important question right now. And he says, oh, Trump. Absolutely, Trump. And my husband had on his shirt, and I said, can my husband take a picture with you? He goes, absolutely. And every guy there, and we all sat and talked about it. And they said, this border czar has done nothing to save our country. It's been terrible, right? Like, we're in a shambles. So, I find it interesting, and this is you, though. You have courage. And it's crazy that we even have to have courage to talk about what we believe in. But we do. And I appreciate your take on that, and just the fact that you have the courage to say what you believe, because I think we live in a world of being canceled now. And, and I think that, you take that courage, of talking the truth, speaking the truth, loving your country, serving your country. And you have served your country at a very high level. You were in the Oval Office when we were attacked on 9/11, which is coming up next week. Also happens to be my son's 33rd birthday, but
oh my goodness.
Yeah, but the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. And you take that same fearless mentality, and you take it into your real estate investing, you take it into your business, you take it into your life. And, that's why I see you and David sitting back, and you're building this empire. Not only do you have an empire financially, which is great, but you build an empire of people. You will kill for your friends. You're loyal to your friends. You're loyal to your tribe. You're loyal to your country, which to me is very, very important. You're loyal to your God. I've seen you stand tall, defending God, defending your faith, defending what your family stands for. So I just want to encourage everybody, if you'll put your book up again, if you have not read Lost Girl, go get this book on Amazon. It will change your life. Guys, I don't say that very often to anybody. Like, hey, read this, it'll change your life. I never do that. That book will change your life, because you will see anything is possible. Anything is possible. Okay. You can go from the worst circumstances in the world to where Rebecca is sitting today. And Rebecca, like people would think that everything you've been through, and once they read your book, they'll see that you would have, PTSD, you would be reactionary, and you run through your life with the most incredible grace, and hope, and encouragement for other people. Like none of
Yeah.
that affected you. It was like God had that for you, so you could go out and you could tell it to the masses. You know, it's
Yeah,
almost
so
like
I was Lisa,
mouth.
I was on the Dave Metzler show last week, and
I know him.
he was asking me, the topic was about just mental illness and how to overcome trauma, and they wanted me to talk about how I overcame that, because my mother was mentally ill, my twin brother has mental illness, and there's a lot of mental illness in my family. And I will tell you, it doesn't happen through osmosis, it doesn't happen by willing it away, it doesn't happen by even praying it away. I think that targeted. First of all, admitting you have a problem and you need help, and then submitting to the process to get the help, and determining that you're gonna be the one to change that trajectory for your own family. It was really important to me in the early years of our marriage, when we struggled a lot with my emotional trauma and David's anger, both of them which were explosive. And I talk about that in the book as well, that we both got healing and help, because we did not want our children to grow up like we did. And again, it goes back to that first step. But in addition to that, there are so many professionals out there that can help. I'm a big believer in trauma healing therapy. It's a specific methodology and counseling you can take for past trauma healing. Where you don't need to. The first part of my entire life, I ignored, and I didn't want to go back to my past. My mother didn't want to go back to her past, and every time I brought it up, it was too painful for her. But sometimes we have to go back, and sometimes we have to dig, and we have to deal, and we have to move forward. Without looking at how we did things in our past, we can't change what our future is going to look like. And so, I encourage people to definitely get the book. If you happen to get it on Amazon, make sure to leave me a rating so I can hear from you on what you think. But it's so important to understand that there are so many resources available to us as a potential, women who want to come into wealth through organizations like 10X and others that can help you learn how to grow your wealth. But there are also so many online resources available to us to get help in other areas of our life. I'm a holistic person, and that. So I deal holistically. It's the mind, body, spirit, physical. It's all. You can't compartmentalize your life, and as a woman, only deal with this piece of your life and not this piece, and keep this piece hidden. You have to deal holistically with your life and get healing in every area to move forward.
Well, I love you. I'm proud of you. I think you're the most incredible role model. Your story will inspire people. It will change people's lives. It'll give them hope. It'll give them courage. When you think you're having your worst day ever, read Rebecca's book, Lost Girl, and you're going to go like, I got this.
Yeah.
I got this. I can go do this.
There's always someone that has it worse off than you, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you
and
so much.
I'd love to connect. I'm on Instagram at Rebecca Contreras. I'd love to connect with your viewers and listeners, but thank you for having me. And I just so adore you. David and I both just appreciate everything you've done to help us find the right deals. If you need someone to help you find the main deal wheeler here, Lisa Copeland. There's nobody, we call it the Copeland effect.
Okay, that was an unpaid commercial, and I do appreciate it. All right, you guys, gals, thanks for tuning in. Share this out. I hope that it gave you some encouragement. I hope it gave you some ideas. And just know that every day is a new day, and the only real way to build generational wealth in this great country that we live in is through real estate. So if we can, me or my team across the country can help you with any of your real estate needs, please do not hesitate to reach out, and I will connect you with somebody if it's not myself. Because if it's right here in Central Texas, it'll be me, I promise. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Rebecca. Until next time.
Thank you, Lisa.